Good evening, members. Welcome to the study circle meeting on ESG. ESG is the most happening topic, and then everywhere people are talking about it. So very important to know what is happening on this. So we have a speaker today, CA Himanshu Kishnadwala. I request our chairman to welcome the guest and escort him to the dais. So welcome to you. Can we have our chairman? Can I call upon our chairman to address the committee?
Good evening, members. Firstly, thanks to rain, I think it's reduced the participation. Otherwise, this topic ESG was a new topic, and a lot of people had shown interest, and they were requesting me that why does the Bangalore branch doesn't conduct this. Firstly, when we talk about ESG, we have both challenges and opportunities. Being a new framework, well, most of us think this is only for the big four. I think of late, the barrier has been broken, and there's quite a lot of opportunities in this era. Firstly, I would like to thank CA Himanshu Kishnadwala who happily accepted our invitation and said that, who is exclusively practicing in that area, said that I will be more happy to share this knowledge on this. When talking about ESG, I request the speaker also to look into these aspects. I was talking about a lot of issues or technical difficulties what we face in our day-to-day reporting. One is on the data availability and the quality of the data what we use for ESG reporting. One is that we find a lot of technical challenges also in this data. We don't have a comprehensive system to track, collect, report this ESG related data, and the accuracy, completeness of that when we are reporting it, how do we look into that aspect. Secondly, standardization. Countries like foreign countries, and we have, with respect to standardization, we have India's for this financial reporting standards, and you have other NSRSP which has been newly developed standards for this. But how does it fit to our sector in our country? How is that tailored fit for us? Third one is with respect to integrating with this in a financial reporting framework, because if you look at a traditional financial reporting, which is very complex, and new systems, new processes might need to be involved when we are looking into this in a new perspective. Also, the cost and resource incentive, because you need a specialized knowledge to look into these, and probably which we didn't even factor it earlier. And looking at the cultural context, India being very diversity, if you look at Western lenses and Indian lenses also, you have quite a lot of framework in other countries with respect to labor, workforce, diversity. And if you look at India, each state has its own diversity in place. So how do we work around on this? Also, regulatory framework, I still feel though SEBI is looking into it, we need a lot more clarity on these aspects. Stakeholder perception, for many companies, especially family-run businesses and all, how do they look at this and try to implement on this? So addressing these issues becomes very critical when we look into this ESG context. So with this, just a thought process, I would not like to take this session, rather I'm not an expert in ESG. So with this little heartily welcome, of course the rain has treated us well, and it's not so hot in Bangalore. Let's probably give it to the speaker. Before that, I would like to call our secretary to give a brief introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So let me take the pleasure of introducing our speaker for the day, Himanshu Kishnadwala. He is a BCom, DCM and FCA rank holder in both Inter and CA final. Senior Partner at CNK and Associates LLP, which is a multi-presence firm, multi-city presence, oversees the audit and assurance and ESG practice of the firm. He has been involved as a lecturer in the accountancy and computer systems at Nasim Munji College of Commerce in Mumbai. Co-authored many books on accountancy and financial management from FIJC to TIB of BCom at Mumbai University. He has active involvement in many institutes. He has been the co-opted member and special invitee in various committees of accounting standard, India's implementation committee, expert advisory committee of the institute. He is a member of various groups of ICA for Financial Review Report Board, and he is also associated with the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, president of BCAS in 2006-7, chairman of Accounting and Auditing Committee, and compiler of the column from published accounts. So I follow this read it very carefully. But then I was always looking forward for the person. Now I know that it's you. Delivered lectures at various seminars, conferences, presented papers, a wide range of experience in accounting standards and auditing, and director and member of audit committees of various companies. So it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Can we have a big round of applause? Over to you.
Right, so good evening to all of you. I know it's a rainy evening, and I think would have held up a lot of people who are enrolled and not able to come here or can come a bit late. So it's good to be here. I think the chairman, the secretary, the past chairman, and all others who are present here. So it's a pleasure to be talking on the new subject, which I believe is something which professionals will be talking much more. And this is going to be, I believe, something like when GST came, every second lecture was on GST. I am sure 2 years down the line we will see this happening on ESG also. Because this is the way forward for a lot of professionals like us in their sense. So we are going to start with a video which is there. And I am sure if I ask a question here, how many of you use an Apple product, I am sure everyone is going to put up their hands because something or the other on Apple we do use. So this is a video on Apple's sustainability which is there. And you can see the diversity, it covers everything, the climate, the social aspect and the governance aspect. And you will find the CEO of Apple himself in this video in one sense. There is a voice.
Welcome down. Hi, I'm Michelle. How's the weather coming? I'm going to do the office is already clear, right?
Yeah, all yours. I hope we didn't keep you waiting.
Mother Nature, welcome to Apple. How is the weather getting in?
The weather was however I wanted it to be. Let's cut to the chase. In 2020, you promised to bring Apple's entire carbon footprint to zero by 2030. Henry David Thoreau over here. said we have a profound opportunity to build a more sustainable future for the planet we share.
I think our 10 o'clocks look the same way.
Damn. All right. This is my third corporate responsibility gig today, so who wants to disappoint me first?
Well, we've got some updates we're excited to share with you.
Materials, status.
Is there a materials person here?
Yes, we are in the process of eliminating all plastic from our packaging by the
Let
end
me guess. 50 years from now when someone else is left holding the bag?
by the end of next year, actually.
And we're also currently using 100% recycled aluminum in the enclosures of all our MacBooks, Apple TVs, Apple Watch.
What about iPod Shuffle?
Well,
It's a joke. Don't you people make Ted Lasso?
Well, that's a different route.
we're also phasing out leather in our iPhone cases.
What about Brandon over there? They phasing you out too?
Oh,
What's next?
Electricity.
Electricity, status.
We're operating on 100% clean electricity.
What runs on 100% clean electricity?
The Apple office, store, and data center runs on clean electricity. Thanks to you and your powerful wind and sun.
And Apple offices are already carbon neutral.
This building is carbon neutral?
But yeah, we do a mix of clean energy and eliminating greenhouse emissions. It's kind of like if you were
You're
to...
seriously explaining carbon neutrality to Mother Nature?
Right, no, I'm sorry.
You want to tell me how photosynthesis works too? Don't.
Also, over 300 suppliers have committed to using 100% clean, renewable electricity.
What's next?
Transportation. I'm proud to report that we're shipping more products by ocean rather than air, which reduces transportation emissions by 95%.
95%. Not too bad.
I'm also happy to report that we're investing in projects around the world that protect the Earth's soil, plants, and trees.
Everyone says they're planting trees.
We've planted forests.
Oh, hello.
Where?
Paraguay, Brazil.
What, are you trying to say the tropical savanna?
Yes. And we've also restored mangroves in Colombia,
What else?
grasslands in Kenya.
Why?
Our aim is to permanently remove carbon from the atmosphere.
What about your water usage?
We've reduced it.
By how much?
63 billion gallons.
63 million?
Billion.
As you can see, we've innovated and retooled almost every part of our process to reduce our impact on the planet. But there's still a lot more work to do.
And there's something else we wanted to share with you.
You're not trying to bribe Mother Nature with apple swag.
It's Apple's very first carbon neutral product.
I want to see you do more of this.
You will.
When?
By 2030, all Apple devices will have a net zero climate impact.
All of them?
All of them.
They better.
They will.
Okay, good. See you next year. Don't disappoint your mother.
So this is a video on sustainability which Apple has showcased. You can see it is a thing which covers environment, it covers social aspects, because you can see all types of people sitting there on different races, different colors, so which means that they are really promoting all sorts of people. And whatever promises they are making, they are going to give answers to Mother Nature, as they have said, on what are they going to do in the next few years or something. One of the very good videos which projects this sustainability, how we really go about it. We will also end this presentation with another video which is from an Indian company, which we will see at the end of the presentation. So when you come to sustainability, it really means ability to maintain something or sustain something over time. So if you preserve something over time, keep it as it is over time, that is what is sustainability, and that's the focus of our talk today on ESG and how do you report all those things which you are doing in the Excels. So in business and policy context, the limits to sustainability are determined only by physical and natural resources, environmental degradation and social resources. And such policies do place a lot of emphasis on the future effect of any given business policy or practice on humans, economy and the ecology. That's what is really sustainability as you understand. Now, this ESG is a term which we are hearing since last few years. When did this really start getting pushed or getting really started talked about? It was not very old, it is just 10 years old in that sense. It is only from 2015 that the United Nations through their COP21, the Conference of Parties of 2021, started pushing this agenda of sustainable development in that sense. And at that particular time, the 17 sustainability goals were laid down, which you hear everywhere, that we have the 17 sustainable goals, and we will see what are these goals which are there. And you had the three core elements of the initiative. One was social inclusion, which is people, economic prosperity, and environmental protection, planet. To which, in the 2030 agenda, they added two more: partnership and peace. So today, the sustainability from the United Nations, which has about 193 member countries, everyone talks about this: people, prosperity, planet, partnership and peace. So when it talks of people, it's the social push. When it talks of prosperity, it is the governance push which is there. The planet is the environment. Partnership means everyone has to work together for something, and peace means you should not have wars. Though of course currently we are undergoing several wars in the world, but one of the UN agendas is to avoid such wars by having peace as one of the agenda items. Sustainability involves ESG, which is very clear. If you want sustainability to retain something as it is, you need ESG, which means environment, social and governance as we normally understand now. And though when you talk about sustainability or ESG, everyone thinks it is only about the environment in that sense. But ESG is not just the environment. Environment is a very small part of ESG, and we will see how small is that part in that whole ESG reporting also which is there. So environmental, you talk about climate, biodiversity, water, energy, the EMS, contaminated property, waste management, toxic emissions, carbon intensity and so on. And staying in Bangalore, obviously you know how the climate has impacted you. I am sure this summer a lot of people have thought about, should I have an air conditioner in my house? A lot of people here don't have ACs, but I am sure a lot of people have started thinking about it. That's the environmental factor of ESG. Social factors are equally important. So that talks about equal opportunities, freedom of association, health and safety, human rights, child labor, race and gender equality, customer and product responsibility, vendor relationship, education initiative, and governance. As chartered accountants, I think we are all fairly aware about governance. SEBI has their governance norms, our institute has the governance norms which are there. So business ethics, compliance, board independence, executive compensation, shareholder delivery, clear accounting, avoid conflicts of interest, political influence or any whistleblower policies which are required. Now before we get into this ESG per se, the reporting which is there are few terms of sustainability which one should be aware about. You read about them every day in the newspapers or you hear them in discussions, but some of us are not very clear on what these terms mean. One is this, obviously, climate change. Now climate change, we only say that the summer has come early, the rains have come early and so on, but climate change really refers to that long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. When in the last month Dubai suddenly got flooded and everything stopped in Dubai, it was a climate change. Though a lot of people said it was because of some cloud seeding. If you look at all the reports, it was clearly this weather pattern change which happened in Dubai which led to that extreme floods which are there. So you can have intense droughts, water scarcity, fires, rising levels, storms, declining biodiversity, all that is nothing but climate change. And there is a new term which has started called climate refugees. You have political refugees, you have war refugees, you have people who migrate from one country to other as refugees, but now you have something called as climate refugees. So because of climate, a particular area becomes too extreme to stay, or that area gets submerged in water, then it become what is called climate refugees. So that's a new concept which has come up because of this so-called climate change. And to get back to sustainability, the climate action is required, which requires significant investments by the governments and businesses which are there as such. The next term which you must be hearing very regularly is net zero. What is net zero? Now everyone is saying in the world, and every prime minister, every company commits, even in this Apple video you saw that net zero was said 2-3 times. Now what is this net zero? Net zero does not mean that I will stop emitting gases which are dangerous to the environment. So I will not stop CO2 emission. I will try to reduce it, but I cannot stop it entirely. But to make sure that I offset that with something else, I will plant trees. So in this video they said instead of planting trees, we are planting forests, so that we become net zero faster. So net zero is whatever I am emitting, I am trying to compensate it by doing something else. So I promote renewable energy. At the same time, I also try and plant trees. I also take some steps where I reduce or get back into the environment what I am using in that sense. And that is where you have a lot of companies doing tree plantation. Now you may say that in an office which is not a manufacturing setup, say a bank or something, what is the relevance of all this? Even a bank or even an IT company emits a lot of CO2 when it uses air conditioners, when it uses vehicles. They also have to become net zero. So how will they do that? They will try to use renewable energy, but at the same time they will also try to maybe plant trees or do some other steps to get back into the atmosphere what they are taking away in that sense. Okay? So it means that all man-made greenhouse gas emissions must be removed from the atmosphere through reduction measures, and the net climate balance after removal via natural and artificial sinks to zero. That really is what we call as net zero. Then what are these carbon emissions which everyone talks about? Now carbon emissions are whatever is emitted in the atmosphere by an entity, by a company, by a country, and they are clearly divided into 3 things: scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. Scope 1 is if I am running a manufacturing plant, whatever I do in that plant is automatically emitting something, that is scope 1, the absolute direct emissions which are there. Scope 2 is something which is part of my process or part of my activities, but it's a bit little indirect. So the electricity which I use in my office, in my factory, they are all scope 2. So if you take a IT company or a service company, they will be more into scope 2 rather than scope 1 in that sense. But the manufacturing will also be in scope 1. And scope 3 are the absolute indirect ways in which it is there. So your transporters, when you do air travel, when you drive a car, your employees drive a car, all those emissions which are there are scope 3 emissions. In the world today, the focus is on scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 3 they are saying we will focus maybe in few more years down the line, but the focus today is on controlling scope 1 and scope 2 emissions which are there. What are these greenhouse gases? GHG as they are called. So carbon dioxide is something which we all understand. That's a basic greenhouse gas which is there everywhere when we breathe, do our normal day-to-day living also we breathe out carbon dioxide. But you have got other gases which are maybe more dangerous than carbon dioxide in that sense. Methane is much more dangerous or much more environmental unfriendly than even carbon dioxide. You have got nitrous oxide, you have also got something like water vapor. It is one of the most abundant greenhouse gas and it increases the Earth atmosphere, but unlike CO2 it can remain in the atmosphere for centuries, and though the vapor can persist just for a few days in that sense. What is greenwashing? Now this is a term which has come about very recently, and greenwashing means that you project to someone else that I am very environment friendly, but they are really not in that sense. So it's creating a false impression of their product's environmental virtues and deceiving shareholders through misleading images or claims which are there in that sense. How do they do that? They have misleading labels, they have hidden trade-offs which are there. And to give you a simple example, if a chemical company which is making pesticides puts all their products with a green color, you will automatically get a psychological impression that it's a green product, that it is environmental friendly in that sense. It may not be at all environment friendly, but they are trying to mislead you. Now doing that is what is called as greenwashing, and it is done by vague or misleading terminology and emphasizing only one small aspect. And you see that in a lot of FMCGs. You had Nestle in the crossfire in the last 2 weeks. You had before that time some other products where they were saying that it is healthy for your health or something. All that is greenwashing in that sense. You put green labels, lack of transparency and false certification. All this is greenwashing. And all these companies, and these are the top companies of the world and in India, have been penalized for greenwashing. You see some of the top companies in the world like H&M, then you have in India examples of Godrej, Consumer Products, Voltas, and these are all taken from published reports where they have been fined or penalized for giving some false claims about being environmental friendly in that sense. So that's greenwashing, and greenwashing is looked upon very seriously by the regulators, that you cannot go and deceive people by doing something like this. A lot of consequences of greenwashing besides these penalties or anything. You can have legal liabilities, you can have environmental group criticism and so on. So greenwashing is something very dangerous for a company, and they will take it very seriously, especially if they are not intending to do something like that deliberately. We said that there are these 17 sustainable goals, SDGs as they are called, and these are the 17 goals which are there. And all these goals are mapped to any report on ESG which you prepare. Even your BRSR report which you will come to, which is in India, all these 17 goals are mapped to your BRSR report which is there. So it starts from there should be no poverty, zero hunger, good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice and strong institutions and partnership for the goals. This really take care of those 5 things which were there: peace, partnership, planet and so on. We also talk about this COP. Now we had a COP which was held in December 23 at Dubai, where our Prime Minister, President Biden, everyone went there and attended what is known as COP. Now COP is a conference of parties. Now once in a year, all the members countries of United Climate Change Initiative, they meet at one place, and that conference which is held is called Conference of Parties. Now parties are actually countries, but they call it Conference of Parties and therefore COP. The first COP was held in Berlin in March 1995, and then these are the last COPs where they were held. COP28 was held in Dubai, UAE in December 23. Every year it is held at a new place, and all the countries go to that place. They discuss how to bring these things to net zero, what should be done next to save the environment, how much money will USA give to save the other countries and so on. A lot of times a COP is also considered as a tourist visit or something by a lot of countries which are there. So we were there from our office, few of us were there in this COP28, and we could actually see that there are very few serious people who are there from various countries who are there. It's more like a tourist visit also. And COP28 was very nicely structured. It was over 10 days. We had first 3 days of meetings. Then they said we need to give a break to the participants. 3 days discussions is too much. So 3 days break and then another 3 days of discussions. So that break obviously is for promoting tourism or something which was.
You can have it online also, right?
But
You can have it online also.
yes, that is right.
It saves a lot of carbon also.
So we'll see what happens in COP. So in COP28, some decisions are finally taken. One of the major decisions taken was what you see on the left, top side, transition away from fossil fuels, which is a bold step into the future. Now this COP, if you understand, was held in Dubai, which is a country which produces a lot of oil, which is a environmental polluting thing which is there. In that same country they held a COP and they had a tough time passing this resolution at the end, transition away from fossil fuels. So they said we should transition away from coal, we should transition away from oil, from crude and other things. You get to this 5 words which are there, transition away from fossil fuels, they took 72 hours. This 190 countries which are there, just come to these 5 words. Because what was required was phasing away fossil fuels. No one agreed to that words phasing away because it means that you have to give timelines. Instead of that they said, okay, let us agree to using these words as a final resolution, transitioning away from fossil fuels. And these last 2 days when the government people sit, they sit through the whole night also. So it's not only auditors who sit through the night, sometimes these governments also sit through the night, especially when you have this COP28 or something which is there. The other thing what they did was, if you see the right hand side, the top thing, loss and damage fund. So they said let us establish a loss and damage fund where all the top countries like US, Germany, UK and all, they said we will contribute money to this and that money should be used for the benefit of the poorer countries. So wherever there is more damage to the environment, this money will be used there. Again, it's all just mere promises which are there and you will see something down the line where how the press said this in their own way in the lot of images which came up after this COP28. So this is what came in the newspapers in COP28 in Dubai or across the world in COP28. So we have COP28 where that car is going with a lot of fuel going away and they are saying that okay, we have discussed fossil fuel, but the cars are still there as it is. No one is getting to an electric vehicle also. On the right hand side we have a loss and damage fund. So this is the loss and damage in the world which is happening and the loss and damage fund is so small which is there. That's the commitment which the larger countries have given in that sense. The bottom on the left side clearly indicates what is done at COP28. Everyone talks, but there is very little action which happens at the end. And it's something like, it says that oh, there are a lot of emissions, let's stop it overnight. So it's like that Jenny saying that oh, a lot of emissions, please come back into the bottle which is there in that sense. So these are the press images describing what is COP28. This was again very interesting. You had President Biden attending COP28 and our King Charles attending. Both had the same time. So people, they attended on different dates. So they were saying that did they switch the ties, did they give the tie to the next one or something. But this was in the press on the front page. That both these people when they were at COP28, they had the same tie which was there. Okay. That was hotly debated, lot of whole page reports were written on this. India, if you see the commitment of India has said we will become net zero by 2070. That's the Prime Minister's commitment which he had made in COP26. So in COP26, Prime Minister Modi declared a 5-fold strategy termed as the Panch Mitra to achieve net zero commitment. So he said no fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatts to by 2030, meet 50% energy from renewable by 2030, reduce total projected carbon emissions till 2030, then reduce this by 45% and by 2070, reduce the whole thing to net zero. He knows that he will not be around in 2030. Because even his third term gets over in 2029. So obviously he is not worried about whether this is met or not met. And they are very careful when they make such commitments. At 2070, none of the people who are around here today will be there in 2070. Okay, when you come back to this ESG thematic global impacts, when you had ESG 1, no, it was more like a fashion statement. Therefore, I am trying to give some statements on ESG. I am forward looking than a lot of other companies. When it comes to ESG 2, which is what is there now, ESG 2 is making things mandatory. So it is now shifting from a voluntary regime to a mandatory regime. And we will see how the mandatory thing is going to impact businesses, going to impact professionals like us when we get further into ESG reporting which is there. So if you see that pendulum from becoming ESG unaware You are trying to become best in the class. That is what it is aimed at. And currently you are at a pendulum where you are doing that ESG integration which is there as such. Next 2 years you will still go down on the right side which is there. Besides environment, which we have spoken about a lot, there is the social, where your human rights, labor practices, diversity and inclusions, customer satisfaction, supplier relationship and community involvement. All this gets captured in the S part of ESG, and even in the BRSR report, this will get captured in the lot of principles of that particular report which is there. Governance, again all these issues are there, and governance, SEBI has put governance in the forefront even before 10 years in India. So this is what, when we do the SEBI LODR corporate governance report, this is part of that governance aspect which is there in your ESG which is there. If you don't take any action, this is what we said, that sea levels will rise, there would be drought, there would be heat waves. See the last one on the bottom. They say that because of a lot of this climate change, coffee will stop growing. I think in a city like Bangalore, it can impact much more than in Bombay where we are there. But that is one of the impacts which is said about this climate change, that coffee trees will stop growing in Africa. Okay, so after all this, see, it's something like doing a lot of your exams for a CA exam, CA course. You do your study, you do your classes. Finally, it comes to reporting. So ultimately, whatever you have studied, whatever you know on ESG, what you report is important. Just like what you have studied is important when you finally write your exam paper in 3 hours. So ESG is also like that. This reporting will capture what the company has been doing on sustainability and the ESG in that sense. So if you see the increasing trend in sustainability reporting, the disclosure is increasing, and if you see in 2011, S&P companies only 20% published sustainability reports. It increased to 90% in 2019, and in 2022 it became 96% reporting on sustainability. You can see the awareness on sustainability reporting which is there, and companies giving information on sustainability or ESG are now perceived as trustworthy and caring for the environment rather than only carrying activities only for profits in that sense. These companies get a higher value in the stock markets now because they are perceived as trustworthy and also caring for the environment in that sense. How do you report ESG? And this is one question which the chairman said, is there a common framework under which I report? So what is that report? Similar like an exam, there has to be an examiner who will do it in a common way. You cannot have different examiners using their own norms to give you the marks. So what is that common norm which is there? And in the world, because ESG started developing, reporting started developing, every country, every voluntary body said, okay, I will develop my own way of reporting. So we had all these reporting frameworks which are there in the whole world. Now which is the best one? Which one should I use in India? Which one is more reliable? Which one gives me the more information which I need? Which is also what the chairman said in his opening speech, that how do I report on this sustainability or ESG? Now, we'll go into how that is integrated now. But see the global scenario. In USA, SEC requires all public companies to disclose information on ESG related risks. In UK, it is mandatory for companies beyond the size. If your turnover is more than 500 million pounds or employees are more than 500. In Canada, there is no specific mandate, but all material information on ESG has to be given. If you take China, in 2022, it has made measures which makes it mandatory for reporting on ESG. If you take the United Arab Emirates, this Abu Dhabi Global Markets and the Dubai Financial Markets has started including ESG disclosures as part of their mandate. And you come to India, India is in the forefront in this. You have this BRSR report, and India is one of the early movers which is also giving the professionals a big opportunity on collaborating on this BRSR reports which are there in that sense. So one of the frameworks where India is in the forefront in the world in that sense. Now this is how a lot of reporting has developed in US, European Union. You had this ISSB Greenhouse Protocol, then your GRI, then IAASB, European Commission, PNFD, DCFD and so on. how does all this integrate? Now, if you look in the world, these were the 5 or 6 reporting frameworks which were most used. You had UN Global Compact, which is a framework, then CDP, Disclosure, Insight, Action, Integrated Reporting, GRI, SASP and TCFD. These were the most widely used frameworks in the world. Even in India, most companies including say Reliance or GSW use the GRI framework till last year or till this BRSR really came about or something in that sense. Now this is again the GRI framework which a lot of companies in India use. We have got universal standards and we have got sector standards. So if you are in a chemical sector, you will have one of these GRIs which will apply. Then there are specific topics within the industry where you have to report if you are following the GRI framework which is there as one of the very popular frameworks in the world. Somewhere in September 20, when this COVID and all was at its peak, you had this International Financial Reporting Standards IFRS, which started a move to unify the sustainability reporting framework. So just before maybe 3.5 years, this move started to integrate everything. And in November 2021, they formed what is called International Sustainability Standards Board. Just as you have IFRS, they started what is called as IASB, they started what is called as ISSB, International Sustainability Standards Board. Now this was a board which had the blessings of all the countries of the world, and they started integrating all standards into a single set of standards. And this is what they did. TCFD influenced ISSB, GRI complements ISSB, your CDP, your other things, they were all consolidated into ISSB. So wherever they found the best framework to report, everything was brought together and it was consolidated in what is now called as ISSB, International Sustainability Standards Board, which is there. So if you look at this, you have IASB, which you have IFRS Foundation, which is a world body. They issue international accounting standards or IFRS, which in India we call it Ind AS. They started what is called as ISSB and they started issuing sustainability standards. So far they issued 2 standards. The 2 standards were issued somewhere in June 23, so just less than a year old, but you have got S1 and S2 which were issued by ISSB. And as we said, ISSB is integrating all the other standards of the world within these 2 standards which are there in that sense. Now, there is something called as double materiality now, and this is where the financial and the ESG materiality is going to come together. And this is again what the chairman said, how will the financial statements integrate with my ESG statements. So just as our Prime Minister says that if you have a government in the state of BJP, in the center of BJP, I think we use what double governance. Double edging. So similarly, you have something called as double materiality now. So it helps companies to identify key material issues that have an impact both from a ESG and a financial standpoint of view. So when you are now going to act as auditors, consultants, internal auditors or advisors to companies, you will have to look into this double materiality aspect when you are advising companies. Telling a company that I can advise you about your profitability is not going to be enough. You will also have to be aware about how this ESG is going to impact that particular profitability which is there. So you will have financial materiality also, and you will also have something called as environmental and social materiality, which is going to drive the business in the next decades or something in that sense.
This one is there only in CSR in Europe, not anywhere else.
This is something of a concept which will be adopted by Indian companies.
Later on, currently it's specified.
No, even currently a lot of companies are using this now, and you will see how it impacts your financial statements. And this is what climate change impact on Ind AS or IFRS. And this is again something which companies are doing it today. So when you have announcements by the government, now our Prime Minister announced something. Based on what our Prime Minister announced, you had the chairman of Reliance saying that by 2035, Reliance will become net zero. Correct? That's again a commitment by that chairman of the company which he has given on a platform to the shareholders. There are commitments like the 1.5% challenge, net zero, contribution to climate funding, shift to alternate energies and this transitioning away from fossil fuels. Now, if the government has accepted that resolution at COP28, the ministry of the government is going to tell companies that by the next 10 years reduce the usage of coal, reduce the usage of oil. They are not going to do anything themselves, they are only going to push it to the companies. So if you have a power plant which is using coal and they are given a mandate in next 10 years, please bring down the value of the coal use by 50%. Now this is a commitment given by the company through the government to the world, which is an environmental commitment in that sense. It impacts my financial statements. Because if I am giving a commitment because of the government commitment that I will reduce coal consumption by 50% in 10 years, my plant will start impairment faster because my plant will not become of any use after 10 years because I cannot use coal after 10 years in that plant. So I have to look at how does it impact my financial statements today also. Because your impairment, your depreciation, everything gets impacted because of this. And this is therefore what you need to consider in your financial statements as to how will it impact everything. Whether you are using your Ind AS 16, whether you are using Ind AS 36 on impairment, whether you are using fair value measurement, how will you value all these things which are there. So all these commitments which a government makes, please ask your clients that does it have any liability which comes to you, because the government will push it through the Ministry of Environment onto all the companies which are there. Okay? So if you are in a, say a company manufacturing fuels, they will say that make fuel which is that BS6 certified. Your plant will be only BS4 certified. You will not be having BS6 certified. Make a motor car which is only going to use that type of fuel. Now all these commitments affect my financial statements. So look at companies which are into mining sector. All that will go out of business, a coal mining company. We will go out of business in 10 years with these commitments which are there. So even your going concern concept can be questioned in such companies in that sense. Okay? So all this has an impact on my financial statements, and which is there in a lot of companies in the world. In India, if you see last year, if you see this year, a lot of companies are putting it in their accounting policies or in their estimates, or even making a provision to that extent that okay, after 10 years I have to reduce this, so I am trying to make an estimate and provide for that liability or something alternate which I have to do in that sense. Coming back to this ISSB, and in ISSB they came up with these two standards which are S1 and S2. And in July 23, they have a webcast, connections between accounting and sustainability disclosures. This webcast is very useful to understand how do these two things connected, as we call it the double materiality concept on accounting and sustainability. And at COP28 in December 23, ISSB has released what is called the knowledge hub on only this sustainability. Lot of material on how disclosures are to be given and available on that hub, which is on the IFRS website which is there. If you just see what is this S1, S1 is like your conceptual framework, that whenever you prepare a ESG report, this is the framework which you have to use. So what it covers sustainability related risks and opportunities and excludes issues unlikely to have an effect. The general requirements for disclosures, they require to consider both thematic standards and IFRS 1 for specific risks and opportunities. So it defines the framework or the background or the foundation under which you will do reporting. If you compare it with your accounting standards, it's the conceptual framework for sustainable standards which are there as such. So IFRS 1 takes a lot of things from the SASB standards also, and they are linked in that sense, deriving a lot of things from the SASB standard, because as I said, they integrated a lot of things into a common standard which is there. So identify and disclosure sustainability related risks, provide industry specific disclosures which are there. So this is the objective, to have some common approach between disclosures of sustainability. Then identifying sustainability risks, related risks and opportunities. This is also part of the standard. How do you identify this and disclose this? When you go to IFRS S2, it is much more in detail, and this covers a lot of industries. So if you are in, say, the chemical industry, if you are in the IT industry, if you are in the banking industry, if you are in service industry, they have given what disclosure should be there. What should you measure when you are disclosing your sustainable information which is there as such. Everything relating to climate as of now. So IFRS S2 focuses on two types of climate related impacts, climate related physical impacts and climate related transition impacts. Currently what are my impacts, and if I try to transition somewhere, what are likely to be my impacts. Both IFRS S1 and S2 is very soon likely to be adopted by SEBI, and the BRSR report, they will say that prepare it under the S1 S2 framework which is there. I am sure the SRSB or the institute which is also dealing in this, they will also soon adopt and give some Indian name to this S1 S2. Just as IFRS was given Ind AS, I am sure they will come up with some Indian name of S1 S2. It could be Ind AS S1, Ind AS S2.
But what are the forthcoming standards as per you? Because
after S1, S2, they will take some time to issue new standards, because in the world this S1, S2 is still being absorbed.
Because SASB is now culminated into IFRS, so they have 77 industry standards. Do you think IFRS?
So S2 gives you that broad level of standards. But you can use in any industry, you can still go to S2.
I can go to S2.
But whole mindset is something like this. If you drive an electric vehicle, you don't get the jerks and other things. So people are saying, I am not getting used to an electric vehicle because I am used to the jerks and the smell of petrol and all. So it is something where companies and all of us have to get used to this. So this is what this particular cartoon says, that the problem with the EV is it is noiseless and eco-friendly, that it is hampering my natural behavior. Okay? You cannot get angry on anyone because there is nothing happening anywhere. Okay? So this is what is the change which will come in, and we will have to adjust to this particular change. What has happened in India? In India you had this again in February 2020, just before the lockdown, that year's council started this Sustainability Reporting Standards Board, SRSB as it is called. They also, along with SEBI, started some programs. They had some awards given to the best companies who give sustainable information and so on. They issued a standard on sustainable assurance engagements, SSAE 3000, which is used today for giving assurance reports on BRSR. Several webinars held, online courses held on BRSR. There is a certificate course on BRSR. If someone is seriously wanting to get into this ESG, this is the initial first thing which you should be doing. It's not very difficult, 20 hours online learning followed by an exam. But this is the basic minimum which one should be doing if you are likely to get into this ESG reporting or something. A lot of development happened with SEBI, with this BRSR report. And if you look at the evolution in India even in way back in 2009 gave this national voluntary guidelines on corporate social responsibility, which is the social part of the ESG. So from 2009 we have moved on a lot. In 2012 they started a business responsibility report. Then in 2015 they extended the report to the top 500 companies. They started with 100 companies, then it went to the 500 companies. Somewhere in 2021 they changed that report from BRR to BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, somewhere in B21. In 2023, which is last year, they said you have the mandatory BRSR for top 1000 companies, followed by an assurance by the top 150 companies. Assurance means audit report by the top 150 companies that on the BRSR report what you are disclosing is proper or not proper. So what is BRSR? It's a business responsibility and sustainable report, and it lays a lot of emphasis on quantifiable metrics for measurement and comparability. And they are drawing upon the 17 sustainable development goals which were adopted in 2015 by United Nations. And they say that if you are preparing a BRSR report, when this was issued, S1, S2 were not there. So they said you can use either GRI or SASB or TCFD when you prepare a BRSR report. Down the line they are going to say please use S1, S2 to prepare a BRSR report. This is the roadmap on a BRSR report. So in 23-24 mandatory for top 1000, assurance mandatory only for top 150. Next year, top 1000 remains common for all the years, but the assurance increases. The audit report on this increases from 150 to 250 to 500 to all the companies who are doing PRS. And these top companies are as per market cap. It is not as per turnover or net worth or anything, it is as per market cap. So your company may not be making much profits, but if your market cap is going in the top 1000, then you will be mandated to prepare this BRSR report. Now that is on direct operations. On indirect operations also, SEBI said that your direct operations is one thing, but if you have got indirect operations, your value chain partners, which means your customers or even your vendors, from 24-25, give disclosures for even your top 250 companies, even give disclosures for your value chain partners, whether your value chain partners are also ESG compliant or not. So you may have today a small transport company. It could be a private limited company, it could be a partnership, but it has say a 500 crores turnover. It is supplying transport to a big manufacturing setup. The manufacturing companies are going to now ask the transporter, are you ESG compliant? If you are not ESG compliant, we may have to change from you to someone else who is more ESG compliant. Because this reporting is going to become mandatory in that sense, even for your value chain partners. So it could be vendors like material suppliers, it could be transporters, it could be your contract laborers or whosoever it is. Everyone in the value chain will also need to become ESG compliant from 24-25 onwards, starting from the top 250 companies. And this is only going to go up, it is not going to go down. So if Reliance is in the top 250 companies, which is obviously it is, and any vendor of Reliance can get impacted on this because they cover 75% in value chain for those top 250 companies.
This would be about 75% in value terms.
In value terms, whether it is upwards or downwards.
And we go back to the earlier slide. Where you have the limited assurance and reasonable assurance.
We will come to that.
Separate reports.
It's a common report where we say that on this portion it is reasonable assurance, on this portion it's limited assurance. We'll come to that. So this is how the value chain will be considered. It is 75% by value of either your purchases or sales. So it covers either your customers or your suppliers or vendors. And the scope of and assumptions of reporting have to be clearly disclosed. The reporting again has to be as per the 9 principles of BRSR code, which are there, which are given by SEBI, and they are applicable to the top 150 companies from 24-25, and you need a limited assurance of all these vendors or value chain partners from 25-26 onwards. And you cannot say it's still 2 years down the line because the companies will take time to decide how to gather that information. A transporter cannot easily find out if it has got say 50 trucks, what is the environmental or the CO2 discharged by all its 50 trucks. It's not so simple to find out. They will need time to collate that information, put some system in place or something. It's not like on a calculator I say, okay, it has gone so many kilometers, so much average, so much estimate. It's not that simple. So when you come to BRSR report, which is really what our professionals are going to get into down the line, we have got this 3 sections which are there, section A, section B and section C. Section A has 24 indicators, B has 9 indicators and C has the broad 9 principles. But across all these sections, there are totally 147 questions which need to be answered. Out of these 147 questions, there are only 20 or 25 questions which deal on the environment. All remaining are on social and governance. So again, it's a wrong notion that when I talk of ESG, it's just environment and we are not really equipped to do it. Because less than 20% of the whole thing is talking about environment, everything else is social and governance. So if you look at the report and we'll see the report, this is section A, which is basically like your first part of Form 3CD, where everything is built up by the company, all details and everything which are there. Then you have section B, where there is some more descriptive things about the management and the process disclosures which come in. So what is your policy and management process? What is your governance, leadership and oversight? What is your stakeholder engagement? Do you have press meetings? Do you have investor meetings? All those things come up here. And section 3 is really the main thing which is there. 9 principles which are there. All these 9 principles are mapped from the 17 SDGs which are there in the United Nations first principle. So the first one is conduct and govern themselves with integrity and in a manner that is ethical, transparent and accountable. There would be maybe about 6-7 questions here, and they really talk about complaints on bribery or corruption, disclosure of interest by directors, training awareness on principles, meeting with shareholders on responsible business conduct, transparency and disclosure meetings. Second is provide goods and services in a manner that is sustainable and safe. What is your R&D expenditure, what are your input materials and their sourcing, usage of recycled, reused materials. Now, you cannot just give a generic term that yes, we recycle materials, we use recycled materials. You have to give statistics, you have to give figures that if you are using water bottles, what are you doing with those water bottles at the end? If you are buying something which is in plastic, what are you going to do with that plastic going forward? The third principle is well-being of employees, including those in the value chains. Now see that including those in the value chains. So my vendor also, if he employs child labor, I am impacted. If a vendor has no separate facilities for women in their factories, I am impacted. So this is captured in that third principle which is there of BRSR part C. Fourth is responsiveness to all its stakeholders. Fifth is respect and promote human rights. So how am I promoting human rights? Do I give equal opportunities to all my people? How many male employees I have, how many female I have? Do I give equal opportunity to differently abled people? Do I provide facilities for even visitors who are differently able to access my sites or my offices in an easy way? Details of remuneration, how many complaints were received? This obviously also includes that POSH which is part of this respect and promote human rights which is there. And if you again go back to your Apple video, you can see the diversity of the employees. They are not showing the employees as men or women or something, they are showing of different races, different colors, everything. If you see that Apple video, that diversity in social is also clearly brought out by them. Sixth is on the environment, protect and restore the environment. Okay, this is one principle which is only on the environment. So what are your air and liquid emission details, solid waste generation and management. Seventh is influence public and regulatory policy responsibly and transparently. Are you part of any public forum where you hear that the policy should do this, policy should do this? If you are a member of SOCAM, if you are a member of CII, FICCI, all that gets captured here. And what are you doing after becoming a member? Eighth is inclusive growth and equitable development. This is directly linked to your CSR spending. If you are doing CSR, principle 8 and CSR is very closely linked. CSR is anyway something which we audit or verify, it's closely linked to that. And ninth is engage with and provide value to the stakeholders and others which are there. So 9 principles, there are totally 147 questions as I said. But this 9 principles, and if you see only one of them is on the environment. If you look at the questions, that 6 has the largest number of questions, but it is not more than 20% in any case of the entire BRSR report which is there.
In 6, principle 6, so scope 1 and 2 is there in the essentials.
Scope 3 is covered from 24-25.
In essential or leadership?
Leadership.
So it's optional.
Leadership. It's optional at the moment. It's optional at the moment. There is also something called as BRSR code, where they say that when you are also reporting on BRSR code, it's an extension of the principle 6 in that sense, and you are going to give all these details which are there. What are my greenhouse gases emissions? What is the water footprint? What is the energy footprint? How do I embrace circularity? So if I am selling a product, what is the life of the product? At the end of the life, what am I going to do with the product? Am I going to recall it? Am I going to tell them that please dispose it like this? So say a computer manufacturer or a phone manufacturer, the life of a phone is 4 years. After 4 years, what are you expecting? Are you expecting people to return the phone? which you will recycle or take away the gases which are in the phone and recycle them, what are you likely to do with them? That is this embracing circularity on any product which you have, enhancing employee well-being and safety measures, enabling gender diversity, enabling inclusive management, fairness in engaging with customers and suppliers. So am I giving any preference to my supplier or customer? Am I giving preference to my related parties? That also gets captured here. Am I giving benefits to my MSME suppliers? That also will be reported here. And how do I, what is the openness in my business? Am I transparent about doing my business also? Now these are BRSR core attributes where the assurance is in that sense reasonable assurance, whereas on everything else it's a limited assurance which is there. Now this is how the SDGs are mapped to the BRSR principles. So if you have the SDG 1, it is mapped at 3 places, principle 3, principle 4 and principle 8. This SDG 1 is removal of poverty or avoiding poverty or something. So it's mapped in 3 principles which are there. So all these 17 goals are mapped in different principles which are there as such. Now this is SEBI, which covers only listed companies. So we are really talking about companies which are manufacturing or service companies or maybe banks and others which are listed. Reserve Bank of India last month or before 2 months in March 24 said that apart from what SEBI has done, they have said that we also would like to ask all people who are under the RBI regime, which covers all banks, all NBFCs, whether listed or not listed. This will cover everything in that sense, and there is a separate roadmap for this. And they are saying what is the governance around climate action in that NBFC or the bank. So who holds the responsibility? What is your strategy for incorporation of climate risks and opportunities in decision making? So what are the short-term, medium-term and long-term risks? Climate-related financial risk management, how are they assessed? And metrics and targets used to measure climate-related finance risk, how is the progress measured? So every NBFC, so we have a gold company which is somewhere in Bangalore, regulated by RBI, they will have to follow this. It may not be listed at all, it may just be a small NBFC, but still will get regulated by this circulars of RBI in that sense. And there is a roadmap to this. To whom does it cover? All scheduled commercial banks. If you are listed and in the top 1000, anyway you get covered in BRSR. But if you are listed bank but not in the top 1000, if you are an NBFC not in the top 1000, you will still get covered because of this. Because RBI is regulating you and they are saying that all scheduled commercial banks are covered, all tier 4 primary cooperative banks are covered, all India institutions like Exim, NABARD are covered, and all top and upper layer NBFCs are covered. You may be listed, you may not be listed. If you are listed, you will get covered twice, one in SEBI and once in this. But this also automatically you get covered. And this is the roadmap. From in 25-26 they cover these entities, then 26-27 they cover these entities, 27-28 again they are having this roadmap as to how they will cover these entities. If you go to NBFC, the first reaction is I am not in manufacturing, I have nothing which I do, so am I concerned with ESG. If you give this to them, they also will be equally concerned about ESG.
So all the NBFCs are covered, sir?
NBFCs which fall in this top and upper layer. NBFC has a definition. Top layer is your Tata Sons and other such companies. Upper layer is several other companies. A lot of your gold companies will get covered in upper layer. If you see again, they don't go by turnover or net worth or anything. They go by much broader parameters. So they are saying that you need rigorous internal controls to be established for climate disclosures, and credit risk management systems now include climate related risk. What does that mean? That means that if you are approaching a bank and you are a highly polluting company, the bank will say that you have a lot of climate risk. If I have to give money to you, I will charge extra interest on you because you are a climate risk. But if you are taking measures and you are more ESG compliant, I will give you a concession on your interest. That is what RBI has told banks, that put a risk management system in place. So if there is a climate risk in your company that you are going to lend money, give them the money but maybe charge something extra from them and monitor how are they monitoring their climate risk or something. So this is also going to impact borrowers. So a transporter or a supplier who is going to borrow money from a bank will be forced to become ESG compliant, otherwise it will have to pay higher interest to the bank in that sense. When it comes to a city like Bangalore where there are several startups, all the startups get funded by the being say Sequoia or KKR or anyone who is there. All of them are now going to mandate or have already started mandating that I will invest in a company only if you are having some basic compliances on ESG. Otherwise I will not give you the money. Even for a startup. You have a lot of startups which go for IPOs. One of the main conditions of IPO now is that you please give ESG disclosures, whether mandatory or not mandatory. In your DRHP or red herring prospectus, give ESG BRSR report. After that, you may not stop giving it, but in my DRHP, please give a BRSR report.
I have not seen
DRA they will ask, the merchant bankers will ask.
I've seen several.
No. You see the last few months, just in the last few months they have started asking this.
It's not mandatory.
It's not mandatory.
They are asking.
But the merchant banker says that this is what SEBI asks for. It may not come formally in their list of requirements, but merchant bankers say please give this because this is something they are going to ask if my company is in that particular industry or something. Insurance companies. Now there is a IRDA framework which has been issued as a draft for discussion in the last month in April 24, and this is the extract which was notified on 1st April 24 that every insurer shall have in place a board approved ESG framework, and the activities of the insurer under ESG will be monitored by the board and will be reviewed on an annual basis. The board shall establish a comprehensive climate risk management framework to facilitate climate risk management, keeping in view the size, nature and complexity of operations. So insurance companies, very few are listed, but all are covered now automatically because of this. Here there is nothing like a size also, they are covering all insurance companies.
How is this different from the stewardship code? It was also released earlier.
Stewardship is something to do more with stakeholders or a responsibility towards the stakeholders.
Things were in common.
But this is a separate code which will come now. They have issued this only on 1st April and they will come up with detailed rules like SEBI came up with. So insurance companies also are now going to require to follow this. Now when you got all these reports, all this SEBI, RBI, IRDA, everyone saying give this report, do this, do that. And we said SEBI has said top 150 companies needs to give assurance. So how is this assurance to be given? Obviously I need to lead in audits, I give assurance under SA 700. So in a ESG report or a BRSR report, how do I give an assurance? Fortunately in a BRSR report they say it is a limited assurance for the 147 questions which are there, and on those 4 attributes it's a limited assurance. So what is reasonable assurance, what is limited assurance? In audit we give full assurance, we don't distinguish limited and reasonable. But in a BRSR report it is a reasonable assurance in most of the cases. In few cases it's a limited assurance which is there in that sense. So, and as auditor therefore you need lot of qualities. One of the qualities is how do you assess this ESG reporting which is there. Now independent assurance obviously has its advantages. So BRSR report becomes much more reliable, much more validated when there is assurance to it. So again in assurance the lead was taken by IFAC, by the IEESB, and in October 2020, somewhere around the time when IFRS also started forming ISSB, somewhere around that time IEESB issued consideration of climate related risks in audit of financial statements. This came up as a document which they issued in that year. They followed it up with this ISAE 3000, which in India was renamed as SSAE 3000, except the change of name, nothing has changed in that whole standard which is there. And ICI also issued something in India which was only for greenhouse gases. which they call it 3410. No one uses that because now we go for that 3000 itself. We normally don't need to go for 3410. So auditors also need to understand how climate related risks relate to the responsibilities under standards. There is a IFAC publication on assurance on this. The European Commission has also adopted a proposal for reporting which is called CSRD, and the EC introduced a EU requirement on limited assurance on sustainable information. Now again, different countries, EU, US started their own thing, but luckily this IAASB again in June 23 have issued a standard which is called ISSA 5000 General Requirements for Sustainability Assurance Engagements. They had comments which they accepted on this until December 23. They will be very shortly issuing the final standard which starts applying from January 25 onwards. Okay. India has to adopt this. India cannot go away from this. Just now we do everything under that SSA 3000, but next year onwards we will have to go with this ISSA 5000. India will give some new name to it, but we will have to adopt this ISSA 5000 which is there. And the 3000 standard and the 5000 standard distinguishes this, what is limited assurance, what is reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance is a little bigger thing than limited assurance. So you have full assurance, reasonable assurance and limited assurance. And your report under SSA 3000 will describe which paragraphs are reasonable assurance and which paragraphs are limited assurance indexes.
Any significant changes between ISA 3000 and ISA?
No change, except the name I to S, no change.
That's it.
Everything is same.
No, I'm saying the standard which will come to force in the end of this.
That we don't know because our institute will now start looking at the standard, see what is the change they need, except the name which they will change. What else change they need, I don't know whether they can change anything in this.
Previous slide, I doubled with this one.
So India has still not, I think the SRSB has still not even come to this level that there is a standard issue like this.
No, but SEBI has accepted ISA 3000 in its fact last year, which was.
This is 5000.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is that what is the passage of
So
this?
SEBI will accept all this faster than institute. That's what we believe. That S1, S2 and 5000, our institute has to accept it. I don't know when they are doing it. I'm not part of anything. He is part of the SRSB. I don't think they have done anything so far as such. Then there is also a concept called integrated reporting. You will see a lot of reports like Reliance, HDFC Bank, GSW, Asian Paints. They don't call that annual report. They call it integrated report. Now what is integrated report? The integrated report covers all these things. You see integrated report, no, they will have everything which is there here. So it's just a new name given to something, and there are some terminologies which are used in an integrated report in that sense. So besides financial statements, they will have environmental, management reporting, CSR, sustainability, social compliance and GRC reporting which is there. So in integrated reporting, there are the 6 capitals. This is clearly a voluntary thing. This is not something mandatory, clearly a voluntary thing. Integrated reporting, where all this was brought out by an organization which is itself called Integrated Reporting. It was funded by the royal family of UK. They funded this organization, Integrated Reporting, and Prince Charles, at that time he was prince, he had not become king. He was supporting this organization which brought in this integrated reporting per se. So on all these 6 capitals which are there, financial, manufacturer, natural, human, social and intellectual, you have inputs and you have outputs. So for instance in intellectual capital, we will say that I employed so many graduates. Because I employed so many graduates, engineers, chartered accountants, my output is, say I have got something in R&D which I have done. So that's the input and the output side of intellectual capital. Similarly, we will have something on manufactured capital. I have got these raw materials which are my input and these are my finished products which I manufacture or something. So this is how these 6 capitals of integrated reporting are described, and you have to give the input side and the output side of both all these 6 capitals which are there. We have also tried to map your SEBI principles with the integrated reporting as well as the SDGs which are there. Now this is clearly putting everything in a similar context. So if you look the SDGs, they are ultimately linked in one of the things, whether it's integrated reporting or whether it is your SEBI BRSR, everything is interlinked. You are only putting it in a different perspective, that's all. So all these SDGs are mapped here to IR also and also mapped to the principles which are there. So principle 1 is mapped to 16 and 17, principle 2 is mapped to so many SDGs which are there, which are 17. Now we don't need to go through all of this, but this is just for record that you can see how closely SEBI has worked on this. SEBI has really worked on this to integrate everything in that sense. What now comes is this double materiality thing where you integrate sustainability with business. So how do you embrace sustainability? And it can redefine why businesses exist, turning them from just making money to taking care of the earth and its people. Sustainability is not just passing trend or a fashionable thing, it's now a crucial part of your business, and it's a call for everyone, business leaders, investors, consumers to join in and make a difference. This is what our world leaders and our industrialists have said in that sense. But this is a city somewhere in UAE which they call it a sustainable city. This was before the floods came. After the flood, a lot of things have changed in Dubai, but this picture was before the floods came in Dubai. The entire sustainable city is entirely on renewable energy. Now, how do you integrate your ESG into business? You have got ESG materiality, you have functional alignment, you have an ESG policy, and finally a sustainability framework which is there. So whether it is human resources, whether it is the way you communicate, whether it is your procurement function, everything can be linked to your ESG materiality or ESG policy for it, and finally the sustainability framework which is there. And the last thing which is useful for all of us is how the professionals like us can play a role in this. Now you have a ESG journey where you assess things, identify the current state of your ESG initiatives, operationalize things as to how do I want to proceed further, and I report what I am doing on a year-to-year basis. These are the three steps in the journey which any company will have to take on the ESG which is there. When you want to do ESG as an assignment, as a project or as a vertical in your office, you will need this team composition. You will need an environmental expert. You can have him in-house or you can tie up with some environmental consultants if you don't want him all the time. You need a social expert who will also be people who understand CSR and all. You will need a governance expert, which is what we all typically understand. You will need an assurance expert, which is again what we are well versed with, and you will need experts for process development and implementation. This is clearly SOPs and processes which you are going to do. So you need this 5 people in a team in your office where you want to execute the ESG assignment which is there, and it's not something difficult to get all the 5 at the same time. You don't need to employ all of them. The last 3, of course, you can do it in-house in the office. The first 2, you can even get them as consultants or retainers or something on a need basis. Till you have that full-time work in your office in that sense. So as professionals, we can do all these 5 things. Advisory services. If we understand ESG, we can as well tell a vendor. Big companies understand ESG, but small companies like vendors and all, they don't understand why this is required. So become an advisor to them. Automate your data points. So how much CO2 I am emitting, I need to automate my data point as to how am I capturing all this information. Assurance services is to start with the top 150 companies, but it will finally go to all the 1,000 companies as well as the value chain. Your value chain partners need much more support than the main 1,000 companies, and collaborations and partnerships. You can work with some entity who is entirely into ESG and work as a collaboration with them. They provide the advisory, you provide the assurance also. And all this can be done within the institute's code of ethics. It is nowhere, saying that you breach any of those rules which are there. All of this can be done within your code of ethics which are there. So there are these 10 things which you can do as a professional in your ESG vertical. reporting and compliance, certificates and standards, materiality assessments, decarbonization goals and strategies, stakeholder engagement, integrating ESG into business strategy, risk management, sustainable finance and investment, education and advocacy, innovation and technology. I am sure 1 year, 2 years down the line, all banks, all NBFCs will create a panel of firms. They will say that from this panel I will appoint you to validate my customers' ESG compliance. The bank will never do it themselves. The bank will say that, okay, I have a list of consultants. You appoint one of them to assess your ESG compliance which is there and let them give me a report. Something like your stock audits. They have a panel. They tell you, you appoint someone from the panel who will come and verify your stocks. This is the same thing which they will do for ESG compliance also. And it is therefore for all of us to get equipped to do all these things which are there. There are a lot of certification programs in India and across the world which are there on ESG. The two highlighted are what are there in India, the ICI course which we talked about, and there is a Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs course which is a about 6 months course. That's a much bigger course which is there, and they give you what is called the ESG Professional Impact Leader Program. That's a good course, it's much bigger. If you are more serious, do the institute course which is a 20-hour course, but also do the next one which is there. If you want to do some courses outside India, some of them are listed here. A lot of them are by the Institute of Internal Auditors, and they will keep on increasing. All these courses will keep on increasing in that sense. Internal auditors or statutory auditors can play a big role, whether it is in advisory or in assurance which is there, and this is given in the IIA magazine in the United States as to how these auditors can play a role. Look at the internal audit function. We are doing internal audits in a lot of places. We typically do the 3 things which are on the right side. If you look at the 2 things which are on the left side, they are ESG related, which any internal auditor will. So if you are an internal auditor of a branch of a company or something, you can advise them that as part of the internal audit, we can also help you to do this. So evaluating internal controls of significant ESG processes and examining non-financial operational control like GHG emissions, human rights, good governance and so on. If you look at any due diligence which is done today, a due diligence checklist automatically now includes ESG compliance validation. So not there maybe before 1 year or 6 months, but now it is part of a due diligence. So when a foreign company wants to acquire some Indian company as part of the due diligence, they will also do a ESG compliance. How do you integrate ESG into IS scope? Vendor management is a very popular internal audit scope. So in vendor management, the scope covered is normally creditworthiness, financial stability and regulatory compliance. Also integrate these 3 things: carbon footprints, social parameters, sustainable and green products. So in vendor management, ask the company that we will also look at this when I am doing vendor management as an area of internal audit. We do a procurement process audit as part of an internal audit. In the procurement process, add these things which are highlighted. That is ESG built into your procurement process audit as part of your internal audit. And this is something which is very easy for all of us to do in that sense. So now that second video which we will play is the volume 1.
Vamos a darle.
right? So what I have written here is something what we all believe that the greatest threat is something is that someone else will be there to do something. I don't need to do anything. But on this note, I think we end this session today. We have started through sustainability, what is it all about, finally ended at reporting and assurance part of it. Thank you.
When you say ESG compliant, so it is about reporting.
Yes, as I said, whatever you do finally is in your report. As I give you an example of a CA exam, whatever you learn finally is in your answer book.
Whether it is good or bad, but they have to report.
There is a rating which is possible. There are rating agencies who are now going to rate your ESG reports.
And when you say the matters of that value chain, because they are not listed, so where do they have to publish their report?
They will give the report to the main company, and the main company will keep it with them, so that they are in turn able to show it to their investors. They don't need to publish. They can always publish it on their website.
So thank you so much on behalf of Bengaluru branch. We thank you wholeheartedly for taking your time out and giving us an insight on this ESG, which is the upcoming subject and which is much needed. So can we have a big round of applause to the speaker? And may I request our chairman to hand over a token of appreciation to him.
Yeah, this is the close. You asked the question, दुनिया किसके हवाले है, दुनिया आपके हवाले है.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Okay, members, we have an exciting event coming up in Bengaluru for the first time. It is a Startup Sphere, a conference which will capture and showcase the stakeholders, all the stakeholders involved in startup environment. So this is on June 27th, 28th and 29th of June. It is going to be a very large event. So request all of you to participate. It could be in different forms and bring in all your connects and people who are startups with whom you are working. It will be very good and it will also be a good, even from the ICI perspective for the startups also. Even the investors, startups, incubators, all of them will be participating, so it will be a good networking platform for everybody involved. And so please actively participate, register. The registration link is on Bangalore portal, Bangalore branch portal, so you can register for that. Please do that. And thank you for participating in today's study circle meeting. Have a good night. Thank you.